gun violence. Could we fix it with one vote? The question is, how? Let's break it down. We know one new law won't solve the problem because, in reality, gun violence is a multifaceted issue. However, solving the problem may not be as complicated as Congress makes it out to be. For gun violence to happen, there's always a gun, a person, and a place where it happens. So to solve this problem, we need to consider all three factors together. Before we begin, it's important to acknowledge that gun regulation of any kind isn't the end of freedom as we know it. Let's also recognize that, unlike many other countries, our Constitution provides a basic right for people to protect themselves with firearms. This issue is not black and white. There's plenty of middle ground between absolute governmental control and individual autonomy. There are solutions if we can be objective about it. The gun. It's clear that bigger and faster bullets are more lethal. The more times you can fire, the more lethal the weapon is. Everyone can agree that there's a big difference between muskets and machine guns when it comes to lethality, so we can adjust our approach for this reality. Gun regulation should be based on the degree of lethality, not the make or model of the gun. The person. The good guy, bad guy argument is just another polarizing choice. Point is, there are all kinds of crimes and some correlate with or are precursors to gun violence, others not at all. Doesn't it make sense that a person's access to guns should be adjusted accordingly? Speaking of good guys, most people with brain health problems are good guys. In fact, people with brain health issues are statistically more likely to find themselves on the wrong side of a gun. That said, there are specific negative symptoms of certain brain disorders that lead to violence. Shouldn't a practical and reasonable solution take into account whether the crime correlates with violence and if brain health is an issue, focusing mostly on the severity of the negative symptoms? The place. Okay, this one is obvious. A gun can cause bigger problems when it's around more people, so a highly lethal gun is no big deal out hunting, but can be devastating in a crowd. There's also a difference between having a gun to constitutionally protect oneself versus having one for sport and recreation. Once again, we can see that for any gun, there are sensible reasons to have greater scrutiny in gun proximity to groups of people. If we look at this as winner-take-all, we lose. However, between the gun, the user, and the place, there are clearly things we can do to find a reasonable position between the extremes. So let's identify a few positions between the extremes to give centrist ideas a safe place to exist. Then, once there are choices between the extremes, let's ask our lawmakers to take ideas from both ends of the spectrum and categorize them. Even better, let's have them do this part anonymously to provide the political cover necessary to follow their conscience. Then let's see what happens. Allow states or CDC the freedom to collect real data. If rates of gun violence don't improve every few months, the most agreed upon measure should be either enacted or moved to another tier on the automatic up-down vote. But let's be open-minded about this and remember that if we find individual freedoms pushed to the point where people cannot protect themselves, we should remove restrictions or move it down a level to correct that. If we genuinely care about reducing gun violence in our country, we have to get serious about making a lasting solution that evolves alongside the issue. As Congress changes every 2 years, they can introduce new ideas into the mix and deprioritize ineffective ones. Ultimately, the takeaway is to get Congress to vote for a flexible and practical process that improves over time, protects freedoms, and saves lives. Get it done in one is an easy vote, and more importantly, it could save American lives. All you've got to do is call Congress and explain to them why gun violence really isn't that complicated.